kind words of introduction. You introduced me in such glowing terms until I can't wait to hear what I have to say. I'm sure it should be profound based on his words of introduction. I certainly appreciate this opportunity. It's a great honor and a great privilege to speak to such an austere body, and I be deeply grateful to Mr. Kane to Kenfield for sending the invitation. A wise man once wrote that where there's no vision, the people perish. And that could be interpreted to say that where there's no clearly articulated vision for a desired future, then the people cast off all restraint. And having cast off restraint, they then self-destruct. This is part of the problem, I think, that is happening in the inner city community of Charleston, that we call the poor community. There's no clearly articulated vision of a better future for the poor community. Therefore, many in the poor community are casting off all restraints, and we're seeing self-destruction take place. It's manifested in juvenile crime becoming more violent. It's manifested in drug trafficking in our street, teenage girls becoming pregnant, far too many of our young people dropping out of school. The very terms, the very nomenclature that we use to describe the poor community, I think serves to really hurt that community. We describe them as being at-risk youth. I don't know really what that is, but the term we use to describe youth as being at risk. We talk about the poor community as being disadvantaged. We talk about it being marginalized. I think it helps to create the Pygmalion effect, the law of the self-fulfilling prophecy. That people become what they think you think they are, and what you tell them that they are. By the grace of God, I have a unique privilege. And my wife often tells me, she said, "You're the happiest poor man I've ever seen." A man who leaves security and position and prestige to pursue a dream. There's something very fulfilling about the pursuit of a dream and a great passion. And I'm a man of great passion. And I consider myself privileged because I'm getting to do what I think I was born to do. And few people get that opportunity to do what they were born to do. I was born to preach. I was born to be a pastor. I was born to be an advocate for the poor community. That's what I was born to do. And once I was able to shed the trappings of the corporate world and pursue that vision, it was very liberating and free to me. But by the grace of God, I consider myself a privileged individual because I'm able to have a unique perspective of this great and wonderful city. I love the city of Charleston. I love West Virginia. I'm a native of West Virginia. And one of my brothers and sisters have left the state, and they often tell me, "Why did you stay in that place?" It's the place of my birth, the place I love, the best place in the world to live and to raise children. So I stayed by choice. Well, my position and my perspective in Charleston allows me to see the city from a unique vantage point. If I could borrow from Charles Dickens and his marvelous, marvelous story, A Tale of Two Cities, that's what I see. My position as the senior pastor of Grace Bible Church, as one who's recognized as a leader, affords me many opportunities. I have the privilege of sitting on a couple of the most prestigious boards in the city of Charleston. And I'm privileged to rub shoulders with the thought leaders of this great and wonderful city. And to see their grace and sophistication and savoir-faire as they develop, plan, implement, and execute projects. To see the commitment to excellence, to see professionalism on display. It allows me to see a very special city, a city in which there are the best of times that we're currently experiencing. My position affords me the opportunity to have access to political leaders. I can call them on the phone, they'll call me back. I can see that progress. From a poor boy from the projects in Malmö, West Virginia, from a dysfunctional single-parent female-headed household, now be able to meet with the heads of the state. It allows me to see a very, very special part of our city. To meet and to convene with business leaders and to rub shoulders with the economic players in our great city, great state, and political brain trust allows me to see a beautiful and a wonderful city, one that we like to promote in brochures to attract tourism. It's a marvelous city. Charleston is a marvelous city. But there's another city. There's the city of the best of times, and there's the city of the worst of times. It exists parallel with the city of the best of times. It's invisible to many of you here in this room because your life and your track does not take you to the thoroughfare, to the worst of the city, or the worst of times. But mine does. As the pastor of an inner city church, my church used to be located on the 1500 block of Washington Street, Washington Thompson on the East End. Arguably one of the worst neighborhoods in the entire state of West Virginia. One of the highest crime rates. Drug dealing and prostitution is a part of the economic fabric of that part of our city. It's within 6 blocks of the state capitol, the citadel of power, right in the shadow of the state capitol. But it's the worst of times. I had the unenviable task when I was pastoring, when our church was located there, to have to eulogize a young man that was shot right next door to our church. The drug dealer was gone bad, only 15 years of age. This past summer, there were, I think, 4 shootings in the space of about 3 weeks. All of them was within 6 blocks of where my church is currently located, on the boulevard, on Vine Street. I had the unenviable task of eulogizing the man that was shot and killed, and I knew all 3 of those individuals that were shot. There's another city where there's the worst of times. I often describe the Florida Avenue corridor as the McDonald's for drug dealing. At any given time, you can come to that part of the city and drive down Florida Avenue and you'll find drug deals taking place right on the street. It's not that the police don't care, it's not that the police are not trying. And they're doing a valiant and noble job. But that's part of the pearl of the city where there's the worst of times. I see the city from a unique and privileged position. I've had the task of being in federal court and circuit court and juvenile court, trying to advocate for young men who have taken wrong turns. And to hear judges pass out sentences, 20 and 30 years, young men barely out of their teens. To hear them be declared to be convicted felons with life permanently scarred. That's the city where there's the worst of times. I work with men and women who are coming out of incarceration. We're trying to find a portal after they've been in our criminal justice system, and trying to find a portal back into the community. And what many of us fail to realize is that 90+% of them about to be incarcerated, one day they're going to get out. And the only question will be, will we receive them back? Will we provide opportunity for them to prove to us that they've changed? I was somewhat alarmed by an article I read in the paper on yesterday evening about one of our political leaders whom I know, I used to work with, and have great respect for him. But I beg to differ with him. He postulated that we could reduce the cost of our criminal justice system if we remove some of the perks out of the system, like air conditioning and heat and education and libraries. I don't believe that prisons should be plush palaces. But I believe you treat people like animals, they act like animals. And our prison system, our jails are filled disproportionately with poor people. People, for some reason, have not accessed the educational system. For some reason, have been unable to function. And that may be the only time for us to rehabilitate them, to equip them, to touch them in some tangible way to be productive citizens. Oh, there are 2 cities. The city where there's the best of times, and the city where there's the worst of times. And I sometimes feel like I'm in a vortex. I'm right in the middle of it all. I see all of the privilege that this city has to offer, but I also see all of the poverty that the city has to offer, and I find myself in the middle, trying to get those who live in the city of the best of times to understand that the best of times can become the worst of times if we do not address the problems that exist in the city of the worst of times, i.e. Columbine, i.e. Paducah, i.e. Jonesboro. These things perplex us because we cannot figure out how could this happen in a city where there's the best of times. How could Columbine happen in an upscale middle-class community where young people have had all of the material trinkets that life could afford them and be building bombs in the basement and their parents not even know? See, the problems in the city of the worst of times have a tendency to metastasize and spread to the city where there's the best of times. And so it behooves all of us to realize that we have a vested interest to try to empower and to develop the city where there is the worst of times. People ask me often, why do you work so tirelessly? Why do you put forth so much effort? Why do you make such sacrifice? And I tell them, part of the reason is out of enlightened self-interest. Enlightened self-interest. I want a safe place to live. I want a safe place to raise my children. I have 4 daughters, and I want them to have choices to who they're going to marry. And I just have to settle for anyone. I have a son. I want him to grow up and have opportunities. I do it out of enlightened self-interest. And my enlightened self-interest also moves me to have interest for those who live in the city of the worst of times. And the greater challenge is trying to get those who live in the city of the worst of times to believe that change is possible, to not become cynical and jaded and not fall into hopelessness and despair, but to believe that there are people who still care, and to believe that if they make good decisions and right choices, that good things can happen. The tale of 2 cities. The city where there are the best of times, and the city where there are the worst of times. And how do we bring those 2 cities together to create a better Charleston for all of us? I have a vision. I have a vision to see a human renaissance take place in our wonderful city. I'm greatly impressed with the renaissance that's taking place. The Charleston Renaissance, the Bidco, and Cura, the mayor. The city should be applauded for all they're doing to give a facelift to our beautiful city, to rehabilitate it, to renovate it. Those thought leaders of the Arts Center ought to be applauded for having such vision and such commitment to work so tirelessly to make such a dream become a reality. But I have a vision for a human renaissance, a renaissance of the people. As I was reading in the newspaper just last week that there's some concern that the population in Charleston at some point may be below 50,000. If that happens, there are certain federal money that we no longer qualify for. Who's leaving the city? It's the people who are mobile that leave the city, who have access to other communities who leave the city, but there's a captive audience that remains in the city, and that's the city poor. And so we have reasons of enlightened self-interest to try to develop that part of our beautiful and wonderful city. So my vision for this human renaissance is I can see with my imagination, I can see young men standing on the corner, not with beepers, but with pocket calculators, accessing the internet and the World Wide Web and cyberspace, and get into e-commerce. I can see that. That's my vision for the city. I can see young women not on welfare, but faring well. Young girls not going down to the local clinic to receive birth control pills or to get access to medical care because they've gotten pregnant out of wedlock. But to see young girls going to academic enrichment programs preparing for the future. I can see that. That's my vision for a human renaissance in the city. That human capital is our most treasured resource, and we no longer have anyone that we can throw away. We can't afford to throw anyone away, because anyone that we throw away, we lose their talent, we lose their skill, we lose their energy that we so desperately need. When I was a young boy, growing up in rural poverty in Mount Hope, West Virginia, a wide-eyed 7th grade at Mount Hope Junior High School, I never forget the spring of 1968. 2 great Americans were assassinated during that spring. As an impressionable young kid, I was captivated by all the attention that was given to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and to Robert F. Kennedy. Now, I remember 2 statements made by each of them, which became some of their mottos. Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy would say that some people see things as they are, and they ask why. I dream about things that's never been, and I ask why not. And I've thought about that many times over the years. I look at things as the way they are. And so that I can apply myself and encourage others to do the same, to create a reality that's never been. When Dr. Martin Luther King's hallmark statement, it was not I have a dream as many people think. His hallmark statement was that if a person has not found something they're willing to die for, then they're not fit to live. And I think that empowering people and reaching people and helping them be all they can be is a calling that is noble of a life commitment. And that's the commitment of my life. To try to help people become all they can be. And it's a wonderful, exhilarating experience. And so I'll just share with you my humble vision in the limited time that I have about for human renaissance to take place. And I serve my children often. I say, commit your life to serving and helping people be all they can become. For in so doing, you are ensuring the security of your own future. But you're never hurt by helping someone else. You're not put at a disadvantage by helping someone else move forward. But instead, you are building the very network and the very platform on which you yourself must stand to pursue your own vision, dreams, and goals. I thank you for the opportunity to come and to share the vision that's in my heart for human renaissance in our great city. I'll be more than glad to field any questions that you might have or to elaborate on maybe some of our programs. Mr. Canfield told me I had about 30 minutes, I think, and normally it's enough for my introduction. I tried to count around the time this afternoon, and I have learned to respect the protocol when inviting someone. That's the point. That is a major part of it. What we believe is that to empower innocent and poor, you must strengthen this family structure. That it's almost impossible to empower you to break the cycle of poverty, of crime, and violence by operating within a vacuum. So we have created what I call an operating system, a synergistic process, whereby we offer a number of different programs. And working with young youth is one of them. Tutoring and mentoring relationships, trying to give them many positive experiences, but also trying to work with the families, help them find employment opportunities and educational opportunities, also addressing the major health issues of the major health disparity that affects the poor community. And so we create a whole plethora of programs and projects, but youth are a very critical part of what we try to do. Because you've got to start as early as you can in working with kids to help them to see that they can become more than what they've seen in their own home. Yes?
In your travels, are there any inner city models that you would like to emulate for Austin?
There are some inner city models that I have studied. One of them being the work of Dr. John Perkins in Jackson, Mississippi, Voice of Calvary Ministries. I've also traveled to Houston. Dr. Kirby John Caldwell, that was featured in the Wall Street Journal, on his work in empowering a major urban center there in Houston. I've also visited people in Chicago, and I've picked up some ideas from all of those places to try to put together what I think is the best approach to dealing with Charleston, an urban city of about 50,000 people. It doesn't have the magnitude of the problems you have in Chicago, New York, Detroit, or Los Angeles, but it does have representation of everything that's there. The drugs, the crime, the violence, the encroachment of the gang presence, the disintegration, the breakdown of the family, the disproportionate incarceration of the men. It has all of the components that you see in an urban setting. And that's where I believe that you cannot make significant change unless you address the issues holistically. Yes?
And without being partisan, have you read Bill Bradley's book, Past and Present?
Yes.
It covers many of the points that you talked about in your fine speech, and it was wonderfully expressed. There's still much work to be done, he ends his book with.
Sure.
And I think that's what you're saying.
That's what what I'm saying is that the model, we know what to do. If I lived in the remote regions of Africa, if I lived in the bush of Australia, then I would question my presuppositions. I would question what I'm postulating here. But this is America. And so we have the technology, we have the resources, and we know how to execute projects. You know, I work for a major chemical company, and we could go to Thailand and build a chemical plant in the middle of nowhere, and it run to perfection. We know how to do it. We send people to the moon routinely. We can fertilize eggs and test tubes. We can do it. We remove organs in our people's bodies. We can do it. We commit ourselves to doing it. And I'm saying that we can do this, and I say it because I believe it so strongly because it was done for me. It was community care. A mother and a grandmother that would sacrifice their life for the children. A church community there that kept us anchored in a moral foundation. A school system that says you can learn, and that every student is expected to learn. And then a whole community that says you are valued as a young person, and we want to see you reach your full potential. That has been my own personal experience. That's why I'm so passionate about what I do. I know it can be done because it was done in my life, because people did it for me. Yes?
This learning center that you referred to, is that a physical plant that you have?
Right now we rent space from my church, the Grace Bible Church. We have the desire to purchase a facility in the heart, a church that's getting ready to become vacant because the church is moving outside the city. We want to purchase that church in the heart of the West Side community so it be accessible in walking distance of many people we're trying to serve, and then move all the programs as well as develop some additional programs that we have plans today. That's what we want to get accomplished. I think you have to create a sense of community again. That's what I'm trying to do with the Grace Bible Church. Our church is a very diverse church, socioeconomically, politically, racially, very diverse. But by the grace of God, we create this sense of community. And so people come from different political persuasions and ideologies can find this vision that we can be involved in trying to empower the inner city communities. So I believe that you do have to have a physical place. It becomes a physical place, a city of refuge, an oasis, and a desert place where people know that positive things are happening and that the people that are engaged in those activities are there to assist them. And so we do want to get this physical place established on the west side of Charleston.
Where is that?
It's in the middle of Main Street. It's 911 Main Street. It's a building that's currently been occupied by the Main Street Church of God. And we're trying to identify the type of resources we need to do that. Yes, Diane.
What would you like to see this audience do to bring about this human renaissance?
Well, I've left some sheets of paper there. It's one sheet. It's one sheet. And it's only for educational purposes to give you an idea of some of the things that we're attempting to do. And then to contact our office and so that we can tell you exactly where we can deploy you. We're always looking for volunteers. There's no replacement for presence, for positive presence. I tell people often that the inner city poor, the biggest problem is not just the lack of money. It's not just the lack of money, it's the lack of leadership, it's the lack of know-how. And so what's happened is we got to create the type of system again to allow the people who have the skills and the ability to come and to share those with people that don't have. The thing that made you successful, as you share those with other people, as they learn some of what you know, then they can do some things that you've done. I don't believe in Robin Hood economics, take all the money from the rich and give it to the poor, the rich will have it back in the car. Because the poor go out and buy new cars, video, giant screen televisions, and clothes. See? Until you change the way they think, until they start realizing that I got to operate on my own best interest, I got to understand capital for enterprise. That's knowledge, that's information, that's what's power. And so education is such an important part of it. That's why the welfare system has failed. I was born and raised in welfare. I used to stand in First Union Baptist Church with my foot in a box with my grandmother to receive our commodity stipend of cheese and powdered eggs and canned meat and so forth. And so I understand the welfare system. The reason the welfare system works is because it's not designed to make people independent, self-sufficient. It perpetuates itself. And I'm not a great fan of how we've implemented welfare reform. I think we could do much better than what we're doing. And I think that we need to seriously look at that. We just can't cut people off and because they're no longer on the welfare rolls, so they must be doing okay. We can do better than that. But it's creating the situation where people are working together at a place with a group of people and a system over time. That's how we bring about change. Yes, one more question. Yes.
I remember in the last few months reading that a National Association of Chiefs of Police came out in favor of the efficiency and self-interest that would be represented in spending money up front in prevention, such as after-school programs, summer camps, things like that. And yet the police are part of the external restraint that comes to bear when the internal restraint is absent. How do you see the trends to external restraint trying to adjust to this notion of repairing the human spirit you're talking about?
We're sort of embarking on a pilot as I speak. Chief Jerry Rife, who's a friend of mine, he and I working together. He was able to identify some grant funds to do a mentoring program. That's one of our expertise. And so we're working together to develop this mentoring program to bring the police officers in and having positive interaction with young people before there's a need for restraint. And if they have a role to play and something to offer, in working with youth before they would be juvenile delinquent or be candidates for arrest. I think that like the chief of police and there's others that recognize the need for prevention, intervention, and diversion. And it's getting the broader community to recognize that also as being a need. Here's the point I would make. That the system will not self-correct. It will not correct itself. And so what it will require is the intervention of intelligent, skilled, trained, resourceful people like you in this room. I had the same conversation with a good friend of mine. They were talking about the levy, one of the school bond levies, and he was very adamant about not funding it. And I said, well, that might sound good, but here's my problem with that. If my wife was taking the money for the groceries, and if my children weren't getting enough to eat, I wouldn't cut money from the budget, okay? If I had to add money over a short period of time, I would add money to make sure my children were properly fed. Then we would get together and see if we could figure out how to manage the budget better. But I would not hurt my children because of her inability to efficiently operate. So what I'm saying is we have to have intervention from the community. In the school system, we need community people involved to make sure that the school system works and educating our children. If the criminal justice system isn't working, if the juvenile court isn't working, it's not going to correct itself. It's going to take involvement of people like you and I to get involved and figure out what's going on, what's the problem, and let us fix it. And that's what I'm saying with as I close with this whole idea of prevention, intervention, and diversion with juveniles, is that we have to intervene. And it has to be people that are not currently involved in the process who intervene to help to get this thing on the right course and to create this accountable structure that you need to have. Behavior cannot be changed unless there's accountability. If you not create a system of accountability to bring to bear pressure on people's lives, then normally their behavior does not change. And I'm suggesting that's why we have to get involved in the system. Thank you for your time.